Aloha, everyone. This is Michelle with Blossom Inner Wellness, and I'm super excited because Kiki from Quantum Venus. Will you go ahead and say your website or your?
Well, it's on Facebook at Quantum Venus or Instagram. Yeah.
She's going to be talking about the Lionsgate portal today, so I wanted to do the whole video of this. So here you go.
Awesome. Is this on?
It is.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Wow. So where do we start? So the Lionsgate, let's just make sure we know what day it is today. It's officially the 8th. Okay. So we are in the space. So just to start out, we're going to do the coordinates. So, so the Lionsgate, oh, perfect. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Let me get my dread out of the way. Okay. Okay. So let me just back up here. Okay, it's super deep. But the Lionsgate is on 8/8, and it's the heliacal rising of Sirius. And so you'll see that a lot of the iconography is because the sun right now is in Leo. So we've got the sun in Leo, and this is in a Western astrology. So that's why it's called Lionsgate. That's where the Leo comes from. The sun is in domicile in Leo. So that means that the sun is at home. So the sun is the ruling planet of the constellation of the sign of Leo. And so when the sun is in Leo, because it rules over Leo, it's at home. So it's full blast. And let me just see really quickly. So I'm going to use Hellenistic astrology, just that's kind of what most people are used to. And then we can talk about some other astrological points as well. But just so that we have a good understanding of where things are in the sky. Actually, let me just put moon. Is in Capricorn. And at 4 degrees. So just so we have our coordinates, it's always good with astrology to just start out with the chart, what's happening in the sky, and then we'll get into the iconography and the mythology. The other ones we want to bring up, so we've got Venus here in Cancer at 26 degrees, so about almost ready to come out. The sun is at 16. So if you have your own chart and you've done, you have your own chart developed or have already had it cast, your birth chart, you can see how these particular points line up to where it aspects on your chart. So that's always how we work with transits. And there's more complications, of course, but this is just very basic, basic 101, because we want to focus on this, on the Lionsgate portal. Let me just see if there's anything else that I want to, and so right now we're filming from Hilo, Hawaii, and I will talk a little bit about Hawaiian astrology. It's actually different on each island. So we have a different astrology here on Big Island than on Oahu and Kauai. Oh, that smells good. Maybe we will add Mercury in there just because it's a little bit close. That's 7 degrees. Virgo. You know, where we are, the moon is conjunct the rising. And actually, this is really fascinating because as we're teaching this class, the rising's at about 29 degrees Sagittarius. So that's really close to the galactic center at 27 degrees. What else can we add here? We've got some Mars, some outer planets. We could just talk about the Taurus activity. It's probably good just to write these down so they can be referenced. Oops. What am I looking at here? No, this is the planets. We've got Mars, Taurus, 23 degrees. We've got Uranus at 18. And this is conjunct the North Node of the moon. You know, we've got a lot of retrograde happening in the outer planets. So I'll just add this big R here for Pluto, Saturn, even Neptune. So we've got all these outer planets. And then Jupiter and Chiron. Yes. Okay. Okay. I'm kind of just doing it for my own reference too, just so that, yeah, I'll just put that, put those there so we can reference them and then I can at least talk to them. So I'm not clicking back and forth, but okay. So when we talk about the Lion's Gate, mostly people are very excited because the Lion's Gate represents Egypt. So we're going to talk a lot about the Egyptian mythology. And this is where you get a lot more of the newer age mystical activity and excitement around this time of year. However, I will say that, you know, thinking back to those times, it meant a very different thing. So it's kind of nice that we can celebrate the Lionsgate portal right now, because in ancient Egypt, it was not as celebratory. It was actually a little bit more terrifying, but okay, so here's Giza. You've got Orion's belt like this. In Egypt. And Sirius is known as the dog star, the bright blue star, and it's going to be going across the sky like this. So we'll just put this here. Sirius. So if you can imagine a time period in ancient Egypt when Orion's belt lines up beautifully with the pyramids, and then you see this bright blue star cruise across the sky, and it probably took about 8 days, but within the whole month, Sirius was visible. And so, yeah, so where can we go with this? So I think firstly, the most important thing to talk about with the Lionsgate is the planet Sirius and the iconography of Sirius. And so Sirius is the god or goddess. I'm going to say goddess just because most of the imagery is more female, while Orion is handling the masculine part. The brightest star in the constellation Canis Major. So Canis is dog. And so Sirius is known as the dog star. And there's a lot of ancient African mythology regarding the Nomos and how the Nomos, the fish people of outer space of Sirius. They're probably on Sirius C, but they came and visited the Dogon in Mali. This was a few hundred years ago. And they visited the Dogon in Mali and in Mali, and were explaining that Sirius has a dwarf star, that there's more in the constellation. So Sirius is not in our Milky Way. It's in its own star cluster and its own star system. And if you can imagine, let me see if I have a picture of the orbit. But you'll often hear people say, oh, it's Sirius A and Sirius B. And so Sirius A is a really, really bright, beautiful star. There's Sirius B, which is the white dwarf star. And then there's Sirius C, which is the red dwarf star. And a lot of people predict that if the Sirius C red dwarf star ends up being verifiable, right now it's not verified, but Sirius C is the one that's inhabited by Sirius. People from Sirius. And if that red dwarf star is able to be verified by modern astronomers, then it will pretty much prove that the Dogon were receiving this information directly from the nomos, from that source. The what? The Dogon tribe is an African tribe from Mali in Africa. Yeah, in Africa. Why are they important? Just like any indigenous people, they're beautiful and living their lives. And right, so that's, yeah, so they knew about it. That's the mythology and their connection with Sirius, is that they, as the world has globalized and people got to know the Dogon, they were communicating about the star systems and some of the wisdom that they had learned from the nomos. And so they explained that there was a white dwarf star and it hadn't been discovered, and that's Sirius B. So Sirius B had not been discovered, and then they discovered it. They also said Sirius C was their red dwarf star, and that has not been discovered by the rest of the world. So if that is, then it kind of just pretty much proves that the Dogon were receiving correct extraterrestrial contact. So what do we want to add about this? So let's just go back to Egypt for a moment. So there's a lot of different mythologies, and really during this time, so we've heard about the dog days of summer, and that's really where this comes from, because Sirius is the dog star. And in Egypt, what is the word? It was the, there was 3 different seasons. And if I can find the word for the second season, but it was the time when the inundation, so it's the inundation of the Nile. So there was 3 different seasons in ancient Egypt. And when the Nile was going through its inundation period, it was the new year, the start of the new year. So all of the Egyptians would look at the pyramids, see it lined up with Orion, and then see Sirius come across the sky. It's bright, bright, bright blue star. It's massive. Almost as big as our sun. It might be a bit bigger. And so it began July 3rd and went to August 11th. And so they're typically the hottest days of summer in Mediterranean. And that is why it's called the dog days of summer, because if you were able to survive during the inundation period from July 3rd to August 11th, and the plants that were able to survive during that time, it was almost like a massive annual sweat lodge. It was the most difficult time in terms of heat. And the sun was in, well, Leo and Western, but the sun was bright. Sirius is an added sun. It's that massive. And so the amount of heat scorching the earth was so much that it would make people crazy. It would kill off all the plants, the trees. It would test all of the plants and the trees on their preparations for the year and their placement on where they were. And so if you were able to make it through that time, that was the biggest, that was the New Year celebration, but it really was a matter of survival. It really wasn't celebration. It was a matter of education and survival. And so most of the Egyptians that were more agrarian were constantly preparing for this time. And so, so it's, as we've developed around the earth, we don't have this extreme connection with the sun and with, I guess they still do in some places, but imagine just a very extreme drought and drought times and not being able to have food and water and literally going to the place of scorching heat. And so that's why it's so amped, but it's beautiful that we're in this time period around the world where we can celebrate these things in a more comfortable way with our phones and our food and our AC and all the amenities. And, we're not in that, that extreme lifestyle anymore. So so it's a lot to celebrate. And let me just see here. Yeah, marked the inundation period, also known as the New Year. Sirius is known as Sothis in Greco-Roman mythology. And there's a massive tie between Isis, the goddess Isis, and I'll get into that because it's actually Hecate and the mythology of the Triple Crown goddess. And I think that's where, we call it Orion's belt now after the Orion-Lyrian Wars, but it is very possible that Orion probably had, a lot of these mythologies had a more feminine history. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Hecate mythology, because they're subsumed. A lot of these mythologies are just subsumed and forgotten. But I wouldn't be surprised because she was one of the first triple goddess deities, always imagined with a canine during the days of Anubis. And so, to line up with Orion during this time with the dog star is pretty deep. So, many thought that it was the soul of Isis, the blue star. It's possible that she was a Nomo. But anyways, so going back, let's see. What else is really interesting? I do have a couple of different really beautiful quotes, poetic quotes that I wanted to share, just talking about Sirius and the mythology. And so I'll just run through a few of those. And these are from the Iliad and different Greco-Roman writings. So it's more Greco-Roman versus Egyptian, where there was a lot more oral mythology. But Sirius was scorching the Minoan Islands from the sky, and the people could not find permanent cure for the trouble until Hecatus put it in their heads to send for Aristeus. So as his father's commands, this is also Apollo. So there's a lot of merging of the different stories. So where we might be talking about Apollo and Hecate and these stories, it might just be simplified as an Isis story. The what? Yeah, Greek. Yeah, but it was, these are all Mediterranean, and so these are passed down after lifetimes of Egypt. So he raised a great altar to Zeus, at the rain god, to make offerings in the hills of the dog star to Zeus himself. In response, Zeus gave the orders, and the Etesian winds refreshed the earth for 40 days. The priests still make yearly sacrifice before the rising of Kion, is what they call, is another name for the dog star. The Kion, priest of Zeus, Aristeos, Lord of moisture, the rain god, priest whose business is upon the mountaintops to assuage stern Myra, Sirius, when she rises. So Myra was a Minoan word for Sirius. Let's see here. A plague. I will get into that, but I still just want to kind of just give the brief history just to set the landscape, because I think it's really important to understand. I mean, in a New Age sense, this time period is a little misconstrued just because the Leo, but it is Leo season. So we do have that strong lion energy. And during the portal, it's almost like there's two suns in the sky. So we still have this relationship with the we still have a relationship with the scorching aspect and as kind of a heat. If you look at the maps of Sirius and some of the navigation maps, there is a link to the galactic center. So there's a lot of iconography around Sirius A and Sirius B. And, the galactic center could potentially be Sirius C. Again, that's at 27 degrees Sagittarius, which is the current rising sign, which is where the moon is. So in astrology, we use a 3 to 5 degree orb, and we're using Western, which again is totally okay. But 4 degrees Capricorn or 29 degrees Sagittarius. So we're in the window of the galactic center. And we can look at maps at how Sirius star system lines up with our current star system in understanding how we might be able to, a lot of the folks will talk about manifesting, but what are we actually manifesting? It's trying to bring down the energies from Sirius, from the galactic center through some of the different portals and then appear in our lives. Yeah, but it's really not to be misunderstood that this was a time of survival. And so when we're in this window between August 11th, it's just, I think, as important to give reverence and offering to the rain gods and agricultural aspects of things, because that's how people survived for lifetimes in Egypt. When we talk about ancient Egypt, it was all centered around this time, this New Year season in the Nile. So obviously there's been a lot of shifts in the weather. But you can see even from Egypt into the Greek mythology, they're still talking about all of these stories and still traumatized a bit from how much drought and survival issues there were going on at that time. So let me see, there's a couple of other quick ones. The star, this is from the Iliad from Homer. The star of the waning summer, Sirius, the dog star, who beyond all stars rises bathed in Okeanos or Oceanus, ocean stream, to glitter us with brilliance. Another one, the star Sirius, the dog star, which comes on in the autumn and whose conspicuous brightness far outshines the stars that are numbered in the night's darkening. The star they give the name of Orion's dog, which is brightest among the stars and yet is wrought as a sign of evil and brings with it great fever to unfortunate mortals. From the Hesiod, works and days, when the piercing power and sultry heat of the sun abate, and almighty Zeus sends the autumn rains, October. This is obviously a different time. And men's flesh comes to feel far easier, for then star Sirius, passes over the heads of men who are born to misery only a little while by day and takes greater share at night. So, they talk a lot about how the dog star Sirius is Orion's dog. And I just want to talk about Hecate because, there's just a lot of things hidden. But yeah, so it's a lot, infuses the earth with extra energy and light, is one of the astrologers or, talking about this portal. And I would say that's definitely kind of an understatement, but scorching is the word that we're really looking for. Ancient Egyptians worshipped Sirius as the goddess Sopdet, celebrating Sirius' return in the morning sky as the farming season and beginning of the new year. Sopdet is kind of like Hecate, but Hecate is nowadays known more as kind of the goddess, in a very, very simplified way, the goddess of witches. So witchcraft, which has a very kind of negative connotation, is associated with Hecate. And we're going to walk backwards through that, because even the word witch is a word from the root Germanic weird and the weirding way, and it all goes into the triple goddess moon traditions. And so Hecate has, if you look at images, she's the triple-headed goddess, and often had literally 3 heads. Ooh. Had 3 heads. And so sometimes when you see like Medusa, the Gorgons are often thought of as like a 3-headed, 3-headed snake or 3-headed monster. That's all original iconography that goes back to Hecate, who's an Egyptian goddess with 3 heads. Mostly they were dogs, but sometimes she could shapeshift. And so what she was doing was looking to the past, looking to the present, and looking to the future with her 3 heads. And that's where we get the 3 fates. And she always had a dog. And so she's also Enodia, which translates as the way. But the medicine, this is a really interesting write-up. So she's the fearless guide who resides in the spaces between the world of humans and the world of spirits, offering us a way for spiritual transformation. She resides at the crossroads where we transcend the material and dive into the unseen river that is her realm. And that's the river, the past, present, and future, kind of the river. And that's why they said it was Isis's soul, because you're kind of imagining the soul path, right? For all of her otherworldly roles, she's also Enodia, which translates to the way, but symbolically refers to her powers over the civilized world, including roads and perhaps management. Thus, her medicine is that both of the world and spirits and mundane. The anima mundi, I thought that was a really great way of describing Hecate. So Hecate, like this, is the original anima mundi. And, Hecate is, it's thinking about the word Kate, the name Kate, and how beautiful and common that is. That's the root of an old Egyptian and then Greco-Roman, especially with the K. And, magic like spelled with a K. That's very Hecate type iconography. She's also known as the keeper of the keys. So, thinking about a lot of the pantheon and goddess culture, if you're to think about keys, and this could be etheric, it could be physical, but the idea of keys is also associated with her. And yeah, it's like crossroads. Star Walker. Yeah. Yes, this is all Hecate. All of these goddesses have such brilliant pathways and histories that are so rich. And unfortunately with her, she got conflated with Isis. So oftentimes people say, oh, it's about Isis in Egypt. And that's a very, very simplified conflating of the feminine as one goddess, Isis in Egypt. But there's a massive pantheon with all these beautiful characters and beautiful stories. And so pulling that apart and retelling the mythology in a way that gives honor and walks the questions back, like, oh, who are these? Maybe it wasn't one woman who had all these, I forget the word for it, but I think it's conflating. They conflate it. The last class we talked about Poseidon. So, conflating the role of Poseidon. So Poseidon was, frankly, I wouldn't even be surprised if it was Minoan culture, but it was the ancient Age of Aquarius role of water women were all called Poseidons. And then over lifetime, she got reduced into like one woman. And then over a lifetime, she got switched into an old man. So yeah, so there's a lot of conflating or so I wouldn't be surprised because of this I'd have to look into the etymology of the word Orion and where that comes from, but I wouldn't be surprised if this triple star belt had much more to do with the triple goddess and Hecate, and then as patriarchy kind of shifted things, it turned into more of a man, iconography of a man. But yeah, Hecate's mother was a astrologer, and so she was known as a Skywalker. And the reason why it's so important is because we've got the triple goddess, and this is what I really wanted to say before talking about the 8-8 numbers. When we talk about the triple goddess, we're really looking at that. But, it's maiden, mother, crone. Maiden, mother, crone. Past, present, and future. And the reason why this is so important is because this concept sometimes gets confused for bloodlines, right? Patriarchal bloodlines, when really women are the ones that hold the womb and hold the ability to procreate. So we're the ones that hold the past, the grandmother, the present, the mother, and the child. So it's always through the women, but over time, these concepts, just get a little bit confused. The anima mundi is the wheel of time. So it's, you can even think of the fortune in some of the Hermetic symbology. There's the fortune as the wheel of time, or Wheel of Fortune, like that show. Yeah, the Wheel of Fortune is, anima mundi, which is Hecate. Let's see, governance. She had governance over the fates. Keeper of the keys, anima mundi, soul of the world. Okay, so as this one, what I found really fascinating was it pulled together Hecate. And again, this is all Greco-Roman, so this is after Egypt. So it's not after all these things happen at the same time, but during Egypt, it's much more of a focus on the agrarian survival through the droughts and how do we get the new year aligned with the inundation of the Nile so that you can grow and survive with your plants through the year. And so that was much more ancient Egypt. But then as people moved up into the Mediterranean and there became more lush rains, then the Greek mythology started to be written and spoken. And so it's Hecate, Demeter, and Persephone. And if you all know the story about Demeter and Persephone, so Demeter's brothers were Zeus and Hades. So and Poseidon, yeah, there was 3 brothers. Poseidon or Neptune. Neptune, Zeus, and Hades were the 3 brothers that split the worlds. Neptune got the oceans, Zeus got the skies, and Pluto got the underworld and the Eleusinian mysteries. And so what happened was Demeter is the goddess of the grain and the harvest, which goes with the Egyptian iconography of that. And something, there's lots of stories, but all 3 of them actually, it's kind of the fall of women. So was she raped? Either way, yes, she was raped, dragged brutally into the underworld. We shouldn't sugarcoat it. Persephone, the story of Persephone. Fascinatingly, Poseidon with Medusa, we're talking again about triple goddess, and we're talking about the Gorgons. Medusa's story, she was a beautiful young woman who got raped by Poseidon. And then Athena said, no, she's telling a lie. And that's how she got turned into an ugly goddess. But she was one of the most beautiful. But I think all of these stories, it was probably just one that's been split and told in different ways with different characters. But anyway, so yeah, you're lining up the Tri-Devi, right? Which is a great archetype for the Holy Trinity, masculine and feminine, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, or Maiden, Mother, Crone, whatever one you want to go with. But so Demeter is the goddess of the grain. Persephone was during springtime, and she got brutally abducted and taken into the underworld with Hades. And Demeter basically went depressed and cried and was so upset with her brothers. And oh yeah, it was her daughter. She's a single mother. She's a single mother. Demeter's the mother. So that's what I'm saying. Hecate is the crone, Demeter's the mother, and Persephone is the daughter. So pulling this in, like, this is what I found so fascinating about looking at the astrology, not just Hecate and the Anima Mundi, but bringing in the Persephone piece. Because in a Western mythology, we're just about at the time when Persephone comes up from her 6 months in the underworld. And so, or she's just about to go in a Hellenistic seasonal sense, she's about to go under because we're getting closer to winter, but she's in more of a pagan sense coming back up. This is like the root of the symbology of when she came back up. So the story was that she was abducted. Nobody would tell where her daughter went. The brothers just were like, oh, Demeter's crazy. So Demeter stopped all agriculture. And basically, we'd have to look and see if she did drought, but I believe she just made everything die through winter and refused to have any springtime happiness, Shakti, beautiful feminine energy, which is what Persephone embodied. And so, she was down there. This gets into the Eleusinian mysteries of the three fates who guarded the underworld. But Pluto or Hades, wanted to marry Persephone. And so the deal, this will bring in Mercury because Mercury is the only friend of man that's able to travel between the three worlds. Mercury went down to try to negotiate a deal. And Mercury's the messenger, went down into the underworld to negotiate a deal to get Persephone back. And so he said, as long as she hasn't eaten anything, she can go. However, she had been convinced to eat 6 pomegranate seeds. And so since she had eaten those pomegranate seeds, the deal was that she had to stay down for 6 months. And every year she'd have to go back down for 6 months. And that's how we got the seasons, winter and summer, or like winter and summer. So so I found it really interesting that Hecate as the goddess of, and I will show you the picture of Hecate in her sort of astral form. So I don't think this was her human form, but in an Egyptian, sometimes it just doesn't put everything in the right place, even though I download these little pictures. And I don't know why it does this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have to look back into Orion, and there was the Orion-Lyrian Wars in a celestial galactic time frame. When we talk about the Lyrians, which is the lions, the lion and Lion's Gate portal. And, the Lyrians were definitely an earthly based people and didn't have the ability to, we hear a lot about Pleiadians and different Arcturians, but Lyrians work similar to the Arcturians, where they have one mode on a planet, and that's to go to the planet and make it beautiful and harmonious and plant flowers, make it habitable. So they don't have another way of being. They don't have war. They don't have suffering. They just only know how to be in that kindness, similar to a cat, but I guess cats are a bit more vicious. So anyways, the Lyrians had about 12 or 14 planets and got destroyed. Oftentimes it's by the Dracos. They just went and destroyed a lot of these habitats. And so then the Lyrians took refuge with the Pleiadians that were able to stabilize the situation. And so, so it would be really interesting to know if Orion, you can listen to a lot of really fascinating speakers, particularly men and psychonauts talking about history, and they'll talk about the Lyrian-Orion Wars as almost a split between the David and Yeshua, and it's a really ancient split and so I wonder if the Orion the history before even Orion existed was Hecate, and then she just kind of got, erased from history in many ways and turned into Isis, and turned into, a lot of the pantheon just got turned into one goddess. But Isis also traveled with her 8 scorpions. So maybe Hecate is known, because it was Sopdet who also has scorpion iconography. So it could be that Hecate had that. But yeah, I mean, if you Google Hecate, it's like a lot of witchy magic. So I can just pull it up. It's, it has the triple goddess, the two, which is the 2 moons with the 3 moons. And, but oftentimes she's associated with the new moon. So it tends to be a little bit more dark mother, dark moon, not the full moon, which is bright and seen and lunar and nurturing. The new moon is, it's dark. It's not in the sky. You can't see it. And so, but it's funny how the imagery is almost like a dark witch, like some of these TV shows like Wicked and things where it's a little bit more, magic and brewing. And let me see if I can find a good image. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of different things, but it kind of, well, here's a good one. This image. So there's so much going on in this picture, but you can see the lion and the other animal. It looks like almost a lamb or a goat or something. And she often is associated with 6 arms and 3 heads. So kind of like a Kali Ma even. In this picture, you can see there's lots of fire, and there's this thing in the back here, which was her dog. There you go. But it's definitely not a depiction of another triple goddess like Ishel. Ishel is often seen with rabbits and weaving and waters, more of a feminine, beautiful Persephone energy, springtime. Hecate is more, it's magic. It's like feminine magic that's not understood, so it's dark. We're just going to call it dark. But it could just be the perception of that, obviously. Yeah. So I found it really interesting, the 3 heads, like Hecate and her 3 heads. And I'm sure there's a lot of stories of like chopping off the monsters with the 3 heads. I think that was the Gorgons. Yeah, and it's because, when we go back, it's just because she's so powerful. That's really, it's not, the fates being able to, control the soul of Isis is really, 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 really powerful. So a lot of times when we have these conflatings, it's just because it's like, oh, that woman's too powerful. Let's chop it down a little bit so we can play more. And especially after Egypt, when the importance of this time frame of Sirius, I mean, it was scorching hot, and it was a time, it was such a deep time for the agrarian, because before there wasn't really agriculture, right? So there wasn't really enough food. And the times of the Nile of the other season, is Capricorn, is the goatfish. So that was a time when there was more fish in the Nile. But during the inundation, there was not this abundance. It was the drought times. And so the lessons and the survival of making it through, and like the vision questing that was going on, and also the care for others. So you can imagine that this time would come up in a society. Some would be very prepared because they've been preparing all summer and all year, and others would be completely naive to the situation and find themselves in a very, very serious situation. So, trying to explain to people how important that time was to prepare for was always a very, difficult task for the cohesion of the society. And, these were like the end of Egypt was like the Aten times, which was more of the solar times. And that's why you often see, the head with the big solar, the Aten, the solar deities. All right, so yeah, let me see if there's anything else I wanted to show. But yeah, so here's kind of more of a nicer picture of the triple goddess. Again, Hecate. So she's got a snake, she's got dogs, she's got keys. And, this is a really, and then the thing on top of her head, the Anima Mundi. And, the dogs too in Egypt, it used to be, there's a lot of sayings that the big Sphinx used to be a dog and then they chopped off its head and made a cat. And so there's a lot of people that believe that there was more of a dog culture before of a cat culture in Egypt. And that's where Anubis came from, and kind of governed. But then Anubis kind of got swept to the side too. Let me see if there's anything else I want to add. But, it's fascinating because all of these, the conflating of the female goddesses is such an issue, and the misunderstanding of some of the words. When we think of the word witch, we think of something sad or scary. And Max Dashu wrote a beautiful book that took her 40 years to write. And I just saw that she was doing a podcast with Susan Weed in New York. But Max Dashu is a great historian, and she does a suppressed histories archive. And she does mostly feminine goddess research, and, goes into women's history, her story. And so she's a really fantastic resource. She has a book called Witches and Pagans, and goes into the etymology and the history of a lot of the words and the iconography and the Venus sculptures. So yeah, I do feel like the quantum Venus is coming through, because Persephone is also Venus, or Inanna. And that's where we get the story of Inanna going down into the underworld and coming back, is also through that same iconography of Persephone. So it's all the same goddesses, but just the stories retold during different periods. We could do a new story and call them something else, for the new modern times. Let me see. Yeah. So yeah, this is a perfect example. Oh my gosh. So if you look at this image, look, they even have the little stars in the back. But do you see how this image with the maiden mother crone and the triple goddess of Hecate with her 6 arms and her keys, that this image with the fire and the clothing that they're wearing with the cloaks is more of like a dark magic. See, it's like really fascinating to me how there's this whole culture, and there's, when we look at other imagery of the triple goddess, particularly from the Mayans, there's one image that I just love and share very often. If I can't find it, that's okay. But oh, this one, here you go. This is a really beautiful one for Hawaii. There's the 3 stars over the 3 mountains. And it almost looks like Orion's belt. And we did go visit Pele, but that she has a Mary Magdalene anchor next to her. So yeah, lots of beautiful imagery, and I don't want to just totally take over with the phone, but if I can just share this one more beautiful. Sometimes I feel like they delete my photos out of here, but could just be that there's so many saved that they get lost. But okay. Oh, here we go. This was the time period. If I can pull it up. Yeah, it's all right. Okay, so we'll just keep going. We'll keep moving forward. But yeah, Hecate's wheel. Okay, so we already talked about that, Hecate, pretty much extensively. Let me see if there's anything else. In Egypt in 3000 BCE is when it occurred. So it was about 6 weeks time period. The Nile also, in a sense, rises, coming up to water the land of Egypt. Again, this is the inundation. But sometimes there would be a massive drought. So it's the dog days of summer and the new year. And let me see if there's anything else that I want to share. Yes. Okay, so let's go into the present time. So it's a cosmic gateway. And again, it aligns the Sirius, the sun, and the earth, but also Orion's constellation. And it's happening on the 8th month, on the 8th day, in the 8th sign of Leo. So I can't really, here, I'm down here. So, you know, the number 8 is associated with good fortune. And one of the things that, let's see, double happiness, can write it up here, is that I love sharing is that 8 in China. In China, 8 is the most sacred of good fortune numbers. And so it's really, with the new year, it's often used. There's a, you know, the number 8 is, it's like you only want 8s because it's ba, and it sounds like good fortune. And so there's other numbers that when you say them in Chinese, they sound like something different. And so like 4 is associated with death because you can say and it's like dying. And so 4s are tended to be thought of as kind of bad luck. And like 8s are thought of as really good fortune. And so if you've ever seen this symbol, this here, my God, my characters, is so excuse my strokes, these are supposed to connect, but that is the sign of double happiness in China. And so it's 8 ba ba, and it's double happiness. And so in a lot of different cultures, the numerology of the 8 stands out, but I just think of Chinese as the most important because there's 8s. You know, the double happiness is often on people's doors and in the house and in the kitchen as, you know, exuding double happiness and good fortune. And so when I think of 8, I think of that. Let's see, there's some other things, you know, DNA codes, Sirius blasting the sun with codes, and then the sun conveys all this to Earth. And so, you know, Sirius is a separate star system. And so I think even further back, it's again pulling from the Sirius C galactic center. Well, if Sirius C is at the galactic center, but pulling from that even third sun, pulling that portal all the way through the Sirius star system. And it's not so much focused on A or B. It's focused on A, mainly, not the white dwarf star. And then pulling that all the way into where we're at now, in through our sun. So really amplifying the sun. So this is a time for solar meditation. It's a time to commune, you know, don't get in a drought. You know, go outside and, you know, be careful. Maybe it's a time for eye gazing, early mornings or in the evening when the sun is going down, and being able to look directly at the sun and get some really organic key codes. Sirius holds advanced energies of love and the spirit, helping us open up our levels of DNA, awakening, completing aspects of our spiritual genetic code that helps us live in the greatest expanse of self. Vibrant energies keeping us alive. And yeah, Sirian frequencies continue from 8/8, 8/17, and then 8/26. And if you do the numerology, that's again a trinity of those 3 numbers. So the 17, 1 plus 7 is 8. And then 2 plus 6 is 8. So it's again this trinity aspect that we're talking about, which is just always there. And in Hawaii, so I did want to just mention Hawaiian astrology really briefly. Sirius is the brightest star in the Hawaiian night sky, dog star. In Hawaii, it has many names, but most commonly called A'a. Sirius passes directly over Tahiti and Polynesian navigators used to find their way back from Hawaii. So on the way back, located in constellation Canis Major, the large dog, Sirius is its heart. First magnitude star is also one of the nearest away. Its companion star, Sirius D, is the white dwarf or the little dog star. So those are things that we knew from before, but one of the other names for Sirius in the Hawaiian mythology is Ka'ulua. And Ka'ulua means it's associated with the double-hulled canoe. And so even though the time period is very different, the Ka'ulua month or the Sirius month is February in Hawaii, so it's not right now. But I would say, yeah, on a star map, it would say A'a. So A'a is probably more appropriate for this Sirius activation, and then the February with the Ka'ulua. And it's the height of the wet season. So I thought that was kind of interesting, just again, pulling in this inundation time. Let's see, Sirius served as the body of the great bird constellation called Manu. So if you look at some of the maps, I only really have a couple, but yeah, that one's probably not a good picture, but yeah, here you can see the summer triangle. So I thought this was a really good one of showing Sirius A and Sirius B. So in Cygnus, and this is like when we get into Betelgeuse and the big birds of the sky between Altair, Deneb, and Vega, that's where Sirius B is in the summer triangle. Sirius A is the sun. So it's really easy to see in this image how like distinct Sirius B is. And this is exactly what the Nomos were saying. And the Dogons is that, you know, Sirius A is here, but look at how Sirius B, it's within this summer triangle that everyone can see. And you can even see that the Sirius B looks bigger than the other stars. But those three stars are part of the constellation of the Big Bird. And so, yeah, the Manu name came up as another name for Sirius. And let's see. So if we just look at where all the other planets are, so we've got the sun today at 16 Leo, the moon at 4 Capricorn, Venus at 26 Cancer, Mercury at 7 degrees Virgo, Mars at with Uranus in Taurus at 18 and 23. Conjunct the North Node. The North Node's also there. So there's been a lot of, you know, Mars and Uranus and Taurus is very earthly activations. But look at Pluto. You know, Pluto's retrograding through Capricorn. So the moon is in Capricorn. So we are bringing in some of that Plutonic energy. And Pluto is directly across from Venus right now. So in Western astrology, you're just in the sky. If you look and you see Venus, Pluto, the planet, is directly on the opposite sides at 26 degrees. It means that they're opposite. So 26 degrees Cancer and 26 degrees Capricorn. So Pluto is retrograde. So it's been showing up really fascinating today, like just thinking about Persephone and Hades. You know, we had a meeting earlier and it was like, oh, the yin and yang of the Shakti and the Shiva is out of balance. And what was fascinating was the Persephone and the Venus was coming in so strongly because it's in Cancer. And you know, Cancer, just to break this down really briefly, whenever we do astrology, we always want to do ruling planets. And so Venus at 26 degrees Cancer is ruled by the moon, which is in Capricorn, close to, at least in Hawaii, at the rising, close to the galactic center. So even though the moon and even though the Venus is being ruled by Capricorn, you've almost got this, like, I don't know if it's masculine, feminine. It could be Persephone or Hades and a handoff, but exactly opposite in the sky, you've got Pluto at 26 degrees Capricorn, but it's retrograde. So I think that's what was the most stark for me today, was seeing how typically like a Pluto in Capricorn could be some ancient ancestor, you know, grandfather time energy, but it came through as like this boost of the feminine, boost of the Shakti. And so the moon and Venus kind of teamed up in this opposition. And I wonder if that was pulling in from the galactic center, because, you know, because it's right there. The galactic center is Sagittarius A, the star, at 27 degrees. So, you know, that could have been just the boost that all of us needed of Shakti and Persephone winning. At least I felt that. I was like, yeah, the Shakti wins. Not in a bad way, but just understanding and breaking down the different types of like Venusian Persephone, like letting the girls be in the flowers and be in the feminine energy. And I was having this really deep vision during this exchange of a pool, and I saw all the girls like playing in this pool of water, and the guys were standing on the outside of the pool. Like it could have been a pond, but it was like a pool, and the girls were playing and just wanting things to be beautiful and taken care of, and the guys were kind of on the edge of the pool and not sure what to do. And so some of them were trying to pull the water out. Some of them were, they're trying to make money. They're like standing on the edge of the pool trying to charge people to get into the pool, or to like even get the water. And I just like thought it was like Shakti primordial waters, and that the men were just trying to help, is what I was explained, is that they're just wanting to provide and help, but really they're trying to connect with their own Shakti. And so they don't know how to do it. And so it's like this idea of coming to the Shakti waters with offerings. And maybe these could be offerings for Persephone as she comes out of the underworld. And it could also, Hades, as we talk about the different triple goddess, and then we talk about the three men, the three brothers, not to say that all of the ancient world was feminine, but what if Pluto is the ancient woman? Because Plutonic energy is very much, we think of Hades, but it's also the Eleusinian mysteries of the three fates. And the Eleusinian mysteries are down in the underworld. And so maybe there isn't this like man in the underworld called Hades, maybe it really is just the Eleusinian mysteries of the fairy fates down there to contend to. So I did kind of think that might be happening, and that showing us this more feminine, ancient feminine archetype of Pluto, instead of the Pluto that we think of as the one that, kind of raped and stole Persephone. So, yeah, and then Demeter, just we've talked a bit about Persephone, but the Demeter archetype, the goddess of the grain, as the mother of the harvest and abundance and divine mother. I think it's really, Hecate is more of the soul and the crone type energy, but Demeter with the keys, in the imagery, like the keys and the snake of Demeter, but also the goddess of the grain. That one might be an interesting energy to meditate on, as really the mama lion. Like, how is Demeter connecting with the lioness mama energy, or even thinking about the lions in a triple goddess type way, like a little baby lion cub, a mama lion in her fierceness, but also in her den, and then the crone lion being taken care of by the other lions. So it might be interesting to just look more deeply at Demeter, look more deeply at the history of the etymology of Orion and how that came in, and if it has to do with the Lyrian-Orion Wars and the Lyrians taking back the earth and planting it with beauty and abundance and not being in a place of war. The double happiness, 8-8, and the anima mundi. Where's the anima mundi showing up in our lives? As the keys, the crossroads, the star walkers, the wheel of fortune. And so that's the whole download. So I think paying attention to the 3 dates. I mean, if anybody has their chart, they want deeper looks, I'm always available to help look at how these things relate to your own chart. So whenever we do chart readings, you look at your own, you break down where everything's happening. So for those of you who are Leos, this is going to be a much more potent time because, and I want to read something really briefly from the cosmic calendar about the sun in Leo, but yeah, so for those who are Leos, it's a very different energy versus like myself, I'm Plutonic, so I really tuned in more with the Pluto in retrograde. I was like, oh, that's beautiful. Pluto's in retrograde. I felt it, and it was like really a relief. Oftentimes when you have retrograde planets, you're seeing something through a mirror. You're seeing a reflection. And that's kind of how it looks in the sky. The planets appear to be moving backwards. But when we look at a planet through its reflection, we can gain a different perspective that might help us work with the energies. So, but for Leos, let me read this page. I got it all squared away here. Maybe not. Oh, there's so many different beautiful planets. Astrology charts here. In information. So this book is my teacher's book that he just published called The Cosmic Calendar by Christopher Renstrom, and using astrology to get in sync with your best life. And Christopher's been an astrologer for, gosh, I guess 40 years now. And he started out in New York and was at Studio 54 and doing lots of little astrology pieces, and then got asked by Harper's to do a book. And one of the funniest stories about Christopher is he's a real historian, and they gave him a stipend to write his book called Ruling Planets. And he took his book and his license and went to all the museums in New York and got license for all the art to put in his book, like different imagery from the Met and all these beautiful museums, Guggenheim, and all these like amazing museums in New York, and ran up, from what he said, I don't know if this is true, but ran up the most expensive bill. And so they stopped doing that because every time, they basically, the publisher had to pay for him to use the licensing of the artwork in his book. And he just loaded it all up with all the art history. And so, yeah, he's a super divine character. And his husband is in brought the ballet. They were both at Juilliard and brought the ballet from in Salt Lake into the top 10 in the country. And so he's an amazing choreographer and ballet director. So, okay, so the sun in Leo, there is only one you. Do you have a question? Oh, okay. Oh, yes.
Taking this right now.
Mhm.
They can't. Maybe Kristen can talk. Kristen can. Okay.
Yes. So as a Leo, and this is exactly what I was going to say too about what we recommend. And yeah, Anastasia is a Leo and she's double Sag, and I want to see double fire, but I do want to see if your Sag is close to the galactic center. Okay. So yeah, she was saying that it's a potent time to receive light codes from the sun. Yeah, spend a lot of time outside in the sun, meditating with the sun. It's sunny right now. Yeah, sitting down, receiving from the sun. And I think we're doing a solar meditation, right, with Maha. So let's see, Sun in Leo. There's only one you, and you take being you very seriously. Now, this doesn't mean you will supervise every facet of your life with a hyper-focus of a Hollywood celebrity. You're not going to monitor your body fat percentage on an hourly basis, keep spreadsheets of your followers on social media, or plunge your face into the bathroom sink full of ice every morning to freeze your pores. Leos are often accused of being vain, but you are not that vain. Who wants to work that hard? Besides, you already know that you're the best thing to happen in people's lives. Your smile brightens their day. Your good humor puts them at ease. And when you need to, your command of a situation gets them a step back briskly into line. Few zodiac signs are as comfortable exercising authority as Leos. It comes from being born at the top of the food chain. You are also born under the only ruling planet that's actually a star, the sun. And like the sun, you are unique and you stand alone. You don't orbit people, people orbit you. It's not like this is something you deliberately set out to do. Right from the start, you were singled out as being special. You didn't ask your homeroom teacher to favor you or be voted most popular in class. It just sort of happened. You exude a magnetism and charisma that people naturally gravitate to. They're happy when you arrive on the scene because it's like the sun rising every day on a new day. They know that everything's going to be all right because you provide the solar power that makes things happen. This is just talking about Leos in general. So this is just a brief thing. Your name on the marquee sells tickets. Your athletic performance wins the game. Your star turn in the kitchen transforms an excellent dinner into a sublime experience. Whatever your talent, skill, or personality, you can't help but be outstanding. Yes, well, I thought we covered it. So 8-8 is today, and it's the solar codes. So it's 8-8, 8-17, and 8-26 are the transmissions. So the transmissions are going to come through in multiple ways. So like Anastasia was saying, the transmissions for her, they're coming through the sun. We should all go out and solar gaze. Yeah, look up at the sun, spend time in the sun. It's definitely, for me, it's a blessing that we're able to be in the sun without a drought and with water. And our survival is not as critical, but that's not to say that everyone around the planet has the same experience. So, thinking about having a second sun and perhaps even a third sun amplifying the energy of our solar experience right now means that the dog days of summer are not to be taken lightly, just respected, and being grateful and thankful that we are in a world of abundance where our survival is not based on that anymore. That would be just giving thanks, like, whew, thank gosh, our ancestors worked really hard to make it through. But it's not to say that that there aren't a lot of people in the world that, don't experience that. So I would say if you do get light codes and are in a place of abundance, to be able to, get some new information, the word manifest is used a lot, perhaps sending, using our power to send that energy to those who are less fortunate, who, drought is actually the #1 climate killer. Although people don't realize, when we talk about climate change, mostly it's drought, particularly for the elderly. And so if there are places in the world that are experiencing drought, that we want to pray for inundation of water to make it through the solar times. So that would be my ask. But otherwise, feel free to manifest away all the blessings that you'd like to see for yourself in the highest frequency possible. Give yourself some upgrades, working with the solar energy, and enjoy a beautiful 8-8 Lionsgate and double happiness.